See, but the only type of time that these men are actually surprised when you find somebody that actually take you seriously is when they themselves thought the utmost lowest of you. When you were at the hierarchy of insignificance to him. And they do typically try to spin the block on you when they do see you with somebody better. But they're not doing it for any other reasons besides vindictive pettiness so no one else can have you. It's about you being treated to the degree of how you carry yourself and you figuring that out that infuriates them the most. Having you to their disposal was 50% of the reason of why they had you around them in the first place. But the other 50 was what you confirmed to them prior before they were even in your vicinity. This man wouldn't even attempt to tread your waters if he wasn't aware that he could sail in the first place. If you let them drive the boat with no license, they're still going to think they're the captain, even if they left you stranded. You just granting him the illusion of a higher ground, especially when he's primarily after that, is often permanently categorizing you. Because they take the least amount of woman that they acquire seriously as opposed to most of them. The woman to him who chooses more wisely is a lot less predictable. He's only taken back by it now because you finally did the thing that he couldn't predict. But it also entails that he has to go through the trouble of replacing you now. And to him, even low-hanging fruit feels like too much work. And if you were the one he was the most surprised by, usually everybody else on his roster ranks higher than you do. If he was keeping his expectations low for the entire duration of him being around you, that means the woman on the higher part of the roster, since they expect so much, he's not going to be surprised by the outcome. He knows already that they're going to request something that he's no longer going to be able to provide in the near future. But you coming behind him, he ain't expect you to find anything. So that means he has to try harder if he wants play. He only chose you because he can be unhinged around you. He figured, oh, you'll just accept it, or you don't know enough about me to know what my version of unhinged looks like. Hence why those men never try with women that understand their social cues. The women at the top of the roster are usually there because they can catch BS. In other words, for this caliber of guy, if you can outsmart him, you're useless to him. He ain't gonna attempt to play you unless he assumes you're gullible enough to get played. When the entire premise and luxury of him being around you revolving around what you can do for him gets stripped away, it feels a lot like the person in training telling the manager to stock the shelves. To them, it feels like the pet telling them to fetch. It's so shocking to them because they kept you in the lowest recesses. Not to mention when that's his primary premise for being around you, the audacity that you granted him for coming and going, you granting him the ability of entering and exiting makes it the last thing that would ever cross his mind. See, the reason why this guy would only check on y'all at the end of the day is because you relinquished security that you were always going to be that shoulder to fall on in the back of his mind. But he would only hit y'all up subconsciously. Like when there's literally nothing else going on. If you're always a backup option, you've already established in his mind that he can comfortably spin the block. I know a couple of people have been there. This guy pretends like your current boyfriend doesn't exist. And some of y'all tend to cave in. Not even realizing that if you did run back to him and he got successful doing it, all that's telling him is that you have a poor sense of setting boundaries. He won't take you seriously just off of that. Anytime he can pull you back, you get demoted each time. The yes itself is crazy. Telling him hello after a long hiatus in of itself has a vast portion of satisfaction to him. I want to remind you to ask yourself, does the fickle outweigh the substance? For them, you are already willing to accept their astronomically, very self-aware low conditions. So they never presumed that you'd find sanctuary in anybody. Because they would insinuate that that's all you know. To him, it's like, she can't find a good man. How's she gonna make that man happy when she only expected the sidewalk from me, not even the world? I thought I wired her to not even love herself, so how could she identify what's good for her? To them, sometimes it's a face of shock, sometimes it's a face of curiosity. But they know in the back of their conscience, your gullibility and predictability is the only thing that gave them confidence to try you in the first place. See how they act when you attempt to switch up the routine one time. That first initial reaction out of impulse is usually what you're in store for being with them. He's going to treat you however way you currently feel about yourself. If he knew that you truly believed that you deserve more than what he can offer, he wouldn't even bother. Don't get me wrong, he'd make an attempt, but it'd be very low ethic. But as much as a lot of y'all want to accept it or not, even if he's not the type of man to take you for a ride, if your whole self has never been accustomed to knowing how you should be treated, even a man who can treat you right will feel like a unicorn to you. This is why just replacing him doesn't work for many people when their mind is fixated on carbon copy. So then you grow convinced that every relationship is supposed to have something bad around the corner that you now identify as good, because that's what feels customary to you. You're pretty much telling the men that even have an ounce of goodness in them, hey, this is how I want to be treated and kept. Most of those men are going to give you that treatment because you either asked or you elicited it. So him being a man that doesn't like you at all just kills two birds with one stone. A man that views you as predictable and only uses you for momentary novelty often assumes that you don't have a mind of your own. So the biggest consequence for a man that took you for granted is not being able to have you. And it's just emphasized on the having part. He doesn't care about caring about you. If he's looking at long term, he has no satisfaction in knowing how many yeses he could elicit out of you. People gotta stop giving the world for others that don't expect it. And these are usually the men that'll say, yeah, you could do your thing, but then get outraged when they see you with somebody. You become the food item that somebody put their name on in the refrigerator. And no man who typically wants you would put themselves through their own mental jumping jacks. On a vast number of cases, the first dude is strictly after this pursuit just to sharpen his skills. But hey, I'm just a messenger.